Why do you say that, Father? You aren't afraid, are you?
No, but I respect some of the superstitions of others. Often they are founded in fact.
Broadcasting live from our Sanctum Sanctorum in bountiful Bakersfield, California. This is the Sixth Sense Society. I'm your host, Krista, here with our producer, Michael. And today we are most excited to have our first in-studio guest and also a local born and raised in Bakersfield to launch Paranormal October. We have Sarah Buckner, a paranormal investigator who's going to give us the real scoop about haunted places in Bakersfield and Kern County. But before we get started, Michael has a few announcements.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to our show. I'm very excited to have you all here and really excited to have a guest in studio for a change. It's going to be a lot of fun. We've got all kinds of great stuff coming up. Next week, we have another paranormal investigator from here in Bakersfield, Missy Bennett, who is a principal by day and an investigator by night. It'll be a lot of fun. And then Holly Lindblom will be back as well this month, the favorite. And we've got some other great shows coming up. We have Lama Kathy Wesley before the end of the year and a new guest, Tony Lee, who's going to talk about Universal Unitarianism. So all kinds of great stuff coming up. So get all the information on our website, sixthsensesociety.com, SIXTH, all spelled out. And while you're there, if you can, buy us a coffee on Ko-Fi. Helps us cover our production cost a little. But the main thing is go to YouTube, click like and subscribe, tell your friends about us, help us grow our audience, and that we really appreciate the most. So I'm not going to take up any more time because I'm so excited to have someone in person finally. So I'm going to kick it back to you guys. So take it away, Krista.
Great. Thank you, Michael. And welcome, Sarah.
Hi.
It's great to have you on the show.
It's good to be here.
I'm just so pleased that the first person on the show is from Bakersfield. That really... It seems right to me, and I'm really excited to learn from you what you know, because as you know, we just moved here, so we know pretty much nothing about the haunted places in Bakersfield and Kern County. It's always nice to get to know a little bit about how a person got interested in the paranormal. So could you tell us a little bit how you first got interested?
Gosh, I guess it was when I was little. I grew up not far from here, and so there were just things that happened and maybe things that I was in tune with when I was younger. I'm not sure, but I used to always tell my grandmother that there was an entity that lived in the closet, and I always referred to it as the little man. I don't know why. So, it kind of started from there and things that would happen there. There was one time when I was younger, gosh, I was probably about maybe 9 or 10, and I was, it was bedtime, and I had gotten in bed and was trying to fall asleep and was kind of half asleep and half awake. And I felt somebody, I thought, sit on the end of the bed. And I kind of looked up and there's nobody there. I was assuming it was my grandmother, and nope, nobody's there. And so I laid my head back down and tried to go back to sleep. And I felt something touch my leg, and I thought, well, maybe my covers slid off. So I grabbed those, and no, they're still on me. And I still can't explain it, but I was talking with my daughter recently about that happening, and she told me that the same thing happened to her when she was little and stayed at grandma's. So yeah, so I guess it's kind of things like that. And then as I've gotten older, loved ones pass away, and so you kind of want to know, is there really something more out there? Do they stick around and keep an eye on us, or right. What's it all about, I guess. So.
That's definitely the questions that a lot of people in the paranormal ask themselves and keep asking themselves to sort of review if they believe what they believe, and if people stay, did they come and go? So what is, let's talk about maybe one of the first places you went to in Bakersfield that you were drawn to that has either reputation for being haunted or you felt there was something there.
Right. As an adult, it would probably, because the downtown area is full of hot spots. There's just all the places down there because they're older and have a lot of history to them, I think. But the Padre Hotel is a big one, and I know everyone always talks about it, but the first time I went in there, it was before it was ever refurbished. It was still the old Padre, and the bar used to be kind of in a corner downstairs, and it was kind of everything that I thought it would be. It was this little, very dimly lit just kind of shady place, you know, and the Padre at that time didn't have a real good reputation. And so we were sitting in there, and you kind of just, you get this feeling that there's old souls around you, you know? So, we were talking with the bartender a little bit about it, and he kind of went over some of the history because he had been there for quite some time, I think. And, you know, he was telling us about the people. There was people that committed suicide jumping out the windows on the top floor, you know, and for a while it kind of became very drug infested, I guess. And there was people that passed away in the hallways, and, you know, it's got an interesting history. And I think the owner is quite a colorful character too, or the former owner, I should say.
Right.
Is kind of a colorful character. So I don't really know what he was involved with, but maybe that has something to do with it, you know. And I can't say that anything in particular happened there, but you really did get this feeling, just this, it's almost a depressing feeling when you walked into it.
Wow.
You know, and I've been in it since it's been redone, and it's a lot livelier. And of course the bar is the main focal point
Right.
downstairs. And, you know, it's definitely different, and there's a different feel. I haven't ever been in the rooms, so, you know, I couldn't tell you if there's anything going on. I don't know. I've seen some local investigators go and do podcasts on the rooms and kind of see if there's anything going on, and they've picked up energy. So, you know,
That's the one place we've been to, and we went to, I think it's called Brimstone, the bar. Is it called Anyway, I think that, and it looks beautiful now. Like, I mean, you can't help but notice the building. It's really beautiful. And I don't know, I can't really say that this was necessarily paranormal, but I went downstairs into the bathroom downstairs. There was absolutely no one anywhere. And no one in the bathroom, no one around. I distinctly heard a female voice say either ho or hello. And I never hear anything. I'm one of these people like, no. And I said, and then I looked around and I looked outside and I said, okay, maybe that was paranormal. I don't know. Maybe it's like, welcome to Bakersfield.
right.
So,
Yeah.
And then the something about the handprints appearing or something, and I forget. There's a place near the bar where they say, but I don't know about that.
Yeah, at Brimstone's. I haven't been downtown in a while, so, and I know there's a lot of new places that have opened up, but yeah, it's quite possible. I mean, like I said, there's a lot of history there, and especially like 19th and that general area is, you know, just everybody talks about the tunnels, and I know the tunnels are there because I worked at Riley's and have been down in the basement, and if you walk the length of the basement to where the sidewalk is
Right.
where the tunnels start, but they're all walled up, so you can't go through them any longer. But it's same thing. It's a very heavy feeling when you go down there, you know, and I can't say whether or not I heard anything because, you know, you can hear all the people upstairs, and so there's quite a bit of noise. And then when you walk out, you can actually look up and there's a grate and you can see the people on the sidewalk. So it was, you know, I couldn't tell if there was any other voices or anything down there, but it was a creepy feeling where you hope that the big door doesn't slam shut on you, you know. You don't want to get stuck down there even with the lights on.
So tell me a little more about the tunnels. Are they throughout Bakersfield or underneath the city, or?
They, in the downtown area, they used to connect, and you could actually access all of the businesses on certain streets. And from what I know about them, the Chinese, I believe, built them or helped build them. So, and you know, Chinatown, there's still a street that, which street is it? Oh my goodness. The Benevolent Society is on it. Anyway, there's still supposed to be open tunnels there.
Oh.
But, you know, I don't think the city of Bakersfield wants anyone to access them for probably, you know, they don't want you getting hurt,
Right.
is what I would assume.
Right.
Because I don't know how well maintained they are. But I know there's a place also downtown where you can go in the basement, and they've got kind of a window and you can see into where some of the tunnels led. And I guess there's a room. I haven't been there, but I've heard about it. So
I just read about that. It's a merry-go-round that little antique store, Maryground Mart, and we went in twice and we didn't even notice.
Oh, really?
So now we're like, okay, next time we go, we'll go and look for that. I was surprised I hadn't noticed it. But
Yeah.
so have you ever, before it's been shut, were you down there ever in the tunnels?
Only, like I said, only when I worked at Riley's, I was down in the basement, and you can walk out, and it's you're still in part of the tunnel, but you can't go all the way through. You know, it's, from what I understand, they're all bricked up like that, so it separates the businesses now.
Right.
But
That is kind of fascinating to have the tunnels there. It's too bad they can't, do something for some of them where we could go down and
Right.
safely go down. But probably you're right. It's probably they're not as safe or maintained or whatever. But I wanted to ask you your opinion about something. I think it was I was looking at this website, hauntedrooms.com. And they wrote about Bakersfield. They say it's one town that has a diverse range of paranormal activity. It seems as though there's just about every type of paranormal activity there. So they were going on about the diversity of that in Bakersfield, and then they went on to list what they thought was haunted. But do you think that's true? There's different sort of types of paranormal activity here that would draw people?
I definitely think so. Yeah. I would say that, you can, from people seeing things. I mean, I can't say never. I'm not certain if I've seen something because it was so real that I kind of assumed it was somebody, but that was out at Gordon's Ferry, and it to this day I can't explain it, but it looked like there was somebody that stood up. I was walking on a trail and it was at night, and it looked like someone stood up behind me, and when I turned, there was nothing there, but out in my peripheral vision, somebody stood up, and I had turned to say something or, and there was nothing there. And I thought, oh my gosh, am I losing my mind? You have those moments where you're just like, okay, I know I'm out here for this particular thing, but am I losing it? Or was somebody really there and they're that fast, or, you kind of go through everything, but there's, I think it's because Bakersfield has such a wide range of people that live here. I mean, there's all kinds of backgrounds and cultures, and there's really good history surrounding Bakersfield, and there's some bad history, so I think it depends on where you're at as far as what kind of energy you get and probably what kind of hauntings you get,
So where exactly is Gordon's Ferry?
It is, it's below the bluffs. It's Alfred Harrell Highway.
Okay.
Yeah, and oh my goodness, it just escaped me. Alfred Harrell, and it runs into
Panorama?
No, it's China Grade. I'm so sorry, China Grade Loop.
Yeah, I've seen the sign for that highway, but we haven't gone down it.
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's right there. It's right there, and the old Discovery Well is in that location too.
And what is the old Discovery Well?
It's the first oil well that was discovered in Kern County. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and like I said, I've been out there a lot, and there's a lot of energy out there, and you really have to be careful, because if you're not careful, you'll end up trespassing on oil field property. But if you go out in the foothills and stuff, there's, just, I don't know, kind of, it's a feeling that I get all the time, and it's out there, it's kind of a bad feeling. Like, I don't know that I necessarily would go back, but I think for people that are looking to experience something, you can definitely experience it there.
It does seem like there are places, land locations that have really negative energy, and some that are really positive. And throughout history, sometimes it's consistent. So when I was studying the witch hunts in Europe, I forget the name of the German town, but it was this one German town that always had a lot of death. They had they burned the most people. And then during World War II, it was one of the worst towns. And I thought, wow, it was like the land too has its own energies.
Yeah. I really think that, I've heard people say that houses or places absorb an energy that happens there. And I kind of believe that, because you just get a certain feeling when you're certain places. And I've had a lot of people that have commented about Hart Park, and I've never got a bad feeling out there. I'm not saying it's not haunted, but it's never felt heavy. It's never felt negative. I think if it is haunted, it's probably a happy haunt. So
Is that a popular place for people to go?
it is, yeah. It's one of the bigger parks here in Bakersfield. Yeah.
So what about, you may or not know this, but what about the cemeteries? Are there any cemeteries that are supposed to be haunted that you know of?
The old Union Cemetery, which is I think it's Bakersfield's oldest cemetery. I know it's the largest. I am sure it's haunted, but I don't know that you'd want to go there to find out. You know, it's kind of in a sketchy part of town, but yeah, it's definitely. I've heard rumors about it. I haven't gone there, and I don't want to go there because just passing through it, just driving through it, it's a very eerie feeling.
Oh.
So, and the road kind of, there's a couple roads that cut through it. So the cemetery is on both sides of you.
Right.
You know.
Yeah, I was interested in going there, but it was too hot. I was going to go in the daytime just because of some of the monuments I saw. I just like taking pictures in cemeteries sometimes, not so much for the haunted side of it. And it did look a little bit sketchy, I have to admit.
Yeah.
I said, I better make sure I go with Michael.
Right. Yeah, definitely you want to. So, but yeah, you know, I have relatives that are buried out there, and I think I think they still allow monuments, but I'm not 100% sure. But it's one of the only cemeteries in Bakersfield that does. So, yeah.
The other ones have run out of room.
No, believe it or not, it's because they don't want to maintain the area around the monument. So for cutting grass and stuff like that and maintaining the cemetery, they don't want monuments.
Well, I guess that's a practical reason then.
Right.
You know? So what other places have you personally gone to or have heard about that maybe aren't as commonly known in Bakersfield that you would sort of recommend in terms of possibly having some kind of paranormal experience?
Well, I know the old newspaper building downtown, where the Bakersfield Californian was or may still be located. You'll have to forgive me. I've been in Iowa for 2 years, so I'm not still certain if things are still where they're supposed to be. But I had a friend that was a security guard there years ago, and he took me there one night, you know, and he's like, you got to come see this place. It's just creepy. You know, it's creepy. And he kind of took me around, and we went down the halls, and it's very, 1940s, 1950s inside. You know, it's got the frosted glass on the front of the doors to the different offices, and it's got that feel, and it still has the old knobs on a lot of the doors. You know, it's kind of unique. But he was telling me that I think it was before it was the Californian. I could be wrong about this, but he said that the owner of the newspaper committed suicide at his desk, and that he had witnessed the chair move at the desk. He didn't know if it was the same desk, you know, but he said in that office, the main office, that he had seen the chair, it will turn on its own.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's supposed to be haunted there. Yeah.
And have you had any of your own sort of personal other experiences and besides the trail when you were out there oh, by the way, I did want to say that, I meant to say it when you were talking about it, when things look normal, like spirits and stuff, that's common, where people don't realize they're seeing a ghost because they just look like a person.
Right.
And, and sometimes that's kind of the easier way to see something.
Right.
So I
Yeah.
wanted to go back and say that I've heard that from other people too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So any other places or experiences that you've had in this area that you would like to share with us?
You know, I think a lot of my experiences were either at my grandmother's, which is kind of odd because they had that house built, you know, it didn't belong to anyone before them but yeah, you know, a lot of what I experienced was there. And then, you know, down in the river, and because I had horses and used to go horseback riding, and so
outside kind of in the nature more.
Yeah.
Now, what exactly, I don't know if you said that on air, where exactly was your grandmother's house?
It's on Pomona Street.
Pomona.
Yeah. So a couple blocks down from the college.
And did your other family members experience some things too while you were there?
My uncle said that when he was younger, he used to think there was something in the closet too. And he was so convinced of it that he made my mother switch rooms with him.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so he was terrified but he was afraid of the front closet, and my experience was in the other room in the back closet, which he had switched to when he was younger. So it was kind of funny, but he had said after my grandfather passed away that he and my grandmother were up at that house and walked into the front bathroom, and there was a swarm of flies in the bathroom, and they couldn't figure out where they came from. There's a screen on the window, and
Right.
there was nothing under the house, and the drains weren't open to anything. And they never could figure out where they came from. They didn't think that they came from the cooling vents because they would have been in other rooms, is what they had assumed. And they were literally just in the bathroom. And he said they shut the door and were trying to, assess what to do about it. And in just a few minutes, they were almost completely gone when they walked back in.
That is really bizarre.
Yeah. So, and I've asked him several times, I said, did that really happen? Are you just messing with me? He goes, no, it really happened, to the point it freaked us both out.
Wow. Yeah, there's some sort of theory that insect invasions are associated with dark magic.
Right.
Which sometimes turns out to be true. I'm not that the insects are bad, but for whatever reason, they're kind of used in that capacity.
Right.
Because I don't want to demonize all insects.
Right.
Well, I guess we get like an invasion of them. It is a little intense. And that one being so specific. I've never heard of a story quite like that with the insects.
Yeah, it's really kind of weird. And, it made me wonder, because I had done some research on my family, and my grandmother's family is the Bell family. And I know, being on the internet and YouTube and stuff like that, I've seen a series on the Bell Witch, and I didn't know what it was. I thought, what is this about? And so I kind of followed some of them, and it was a gentleman named John Bell, and apparently he had this witch that tormented him and his family for years. And he said before he died that she killed him.
Yeah.
So, and I know my grandmother had mentioned that there was a curse on the family, and I kind of wonder now, she's passed away and I can't ask her, but I wonder, is that what she was talking about? So I don't know. I haven't been able to trace our family back far enough to find out if we're related, but
That's a fascinating connection, actually.
Yeah.
It's when I think Holly talked about that in her travels that comes on the show, the Bell Witch house, and the story is, which I never knew about until we started talking to some of the paranormal people here. And so that one tends to be a little scary, that story.
Definitely.
Because no one seemed to have a good time there. And the fact when somebody ends up dying too, you're like, okay.
Right.
Not just, moving out or something, which is bad enough. But also, do you personally have any equipment that you like to use? Do you just go to places and sort of see what they're like?
A lot of the times I just go on my own or go with a friend, and I've tried some of the apps that they have for the phones,
Right.
And there's only a couple that I found that were interesting, that you couldn't explain. The rest are very, kind of childish, I think. So, you can kind of explain them away, like, oh, it's just preset in the app, or, but I found a couple that are pretty interesting. So I've used those and kind of played around with that. And then even on the ones that I've thought were, not real, I've gone out with them and I've had answers come back to specific questions. And it was definitely an answer to that question, so who knows? I think maybe they can use technology any way they want to,
Well, it's definitely one of the most common theories or hypothesis is that the dead can use the energy associated with technology in order to communicate with us. And certainly there's all kinds of gadgets that people use, and some believes certain things work more than others. So it does seem like certainly a working hypothesis based on so many groups using them and having some sort of answer, like you said.
Right.
I also personally think I do count people's own experiences, though I am very skeptical sometimes of mediums, but not of individual people telling their stories.
Right.
Often because they don't fit into a box.
Right.
That's something, and I think that, it seems to me that you're sensitive to things because the idea when you were a kid, you felt that energy in the closet, which under the bed or the closet, which one it is. And so what do you think about the two of those techniques? Like the idea of like somehow both of them being sort of legitimate ways of trying to connect to the particular location or the entities involved in the location?
I think you know, I think with mediums and psychics or clairvoyants, obviously there's people that want to scam people, you know, and that they're not real or they're not what they claim to be, you know. And then I think too, there's people that are genuine, but maybe, you know, I don't know how you hone those skills. And I, in the past, after my mom passed away, I heard voices, but they were very negative and cruel. But you know, I literally could have a conversation with them. And I thought about for a while, you know, as I learned to cope with them, I thought about, well, I wonder if I can use these, you know what I mean? The more I got a hold of the fact that, well, because to me, no matter what, they were demonic. You know, I'm there's no doubt in my mind. I mean, a psychiatrist will tell you, you know, it's all in your head. Well, I know it's in my head. I'm the only one that can hear them, you know, but what are they? And so I just assumed, well, I just figured they're demonic, and wherever they come from, I think it's trauma maybe that lets them in, or, you know, you just get to a real low point in life and it lets them in. But you're trying to hone that and trying to use it to help people or to understand death, or it kind of didn't work for me. And I mean, it may for some mediums or clairvoyants, or, you know, but it scares me to death now. And they left, thank God, and I don't hear them any longer, but I don't want them back, you know, good or bad. So.
And how long were they there, do you think? How many?
I would say a good 10 years, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Off
a
and
long
on, I would
time
hear
to be
them.
tormented by an energy.
Yeah, it was really difficult. The first few years were the hardest, I think.
And you felt there was more than one? Did they have a different, like, sound of their voice or different way of saying things?
There was definitely more than one. And I had, you know, there was a couple that were actually, I think, peaceful and meant well. But whatever kind of energy that is, however it interacts, they wouldn't always be there. And I think it was because of the bad energy, you know, and the bad seemed to be able to overpower them, the good ones. So it was a tough time, and I'm so glad that they're gone. But, you know, there is a side of me that wonders, could I pull them back in? You know, could I use that for, I don't know, maybe talking to my mother or maybe my grandmother, you know, since they've passed away. And
What do you think they could see or predict things that accurately about the future, or that they had some sort of psychic abilities, these particular voices?
they definitely, because there was a couple of major events that happened in the world that they told me about before they happened. So yeah, I definitely think so.
And did they ever say their names at all to you?
No.
No names. Interesting. Well, what could be possible is, because it's fascinating to me. I've never heard quite a story like this where they suddenly left. Usually with something like that, and for so long, you'd have to get a lot of help to get them to go. So it could be a gift that you have, being open to, let's say, alternative realities, so that instead of thinking like you have to get those types of voices back, there might be a way you can just connect directly to the dead. Right. Rudolf Steiner, obviously in my field, I get a lot of questions about, you know, can you talk to my mother or grandmother? And I can talk to my own, but I don't do it for other people. But I've done a lot of research, and, well, not a lot, but a fair amount. And Rudolf Steiner's book, Staying Connected, he is a famous metaphysical man that was around the early 1900s, and he talks about how everyone can talk to their own relatives because of the connection through your bloodline, and that it's a natural ability. He also believes, he's the only one I've heard say this, that we're meant to do that. We're meant to continue the relationships. It's helpful, and he talks about how it helps them, that you're not holding them back, but you're allowing the relationship to continue. Right. So you would want to sort of not just, you know, think of them as they were, but allow them to also continue. And the reason I found out about the book was because of a friend of ours. Her mom had died when she was in her 20s, And she had been conversing with her mother for decades through the dreams. And she said she had this evolving relationship with her mother. And you could tell talking to her how well adjusted she was.
Right.
And it was really, I'd never met anybody quite like that. And that's why I looked into the book. And because of her, I said, wow, she's just had a ongoing thing. So she didn't completely miss out on her mother.
Right.
And it was healthy. She's a healthy person, you know,
Yeah.
she's not trying to escape the world. And so probably you could also, based on you have some sort of abilities that maybe you just hone them a different way.
Right. Yeah. Well, finding someone that is open to that idea is a little tricky too. So, you know, and I don't want to tell the wrong people and go down the wrong road with it, you know? But yeah, you know, if I knew for sure it was going to be mostly positive, I would consider it. Yeah. But I'm terrified that the bad ones will come back because they were so just, I mean, negative. It was such a dark time in my life, you know, and my mother's passing wasn't sudden, but there was a lot that went along with it because I wasn't there when she passed. And so I kind of got a lot of backlash from the family for not being there, but she had been sick for quite some time. And so there was a lot of rushing to the hospital and thinking she was going to pass, and then she would pull through. And so anyway, I wasn't there to the day that she passed, but you know,
Well, that does happen sometimes because of them. This is the theory I've heard, because I had the same thing happen with my grandmother. I was there every day, and then she passed when I wasn't there.
Right.
And some people say that some relatives do that on purpose because they feel they can leave without any kind of guilt, and they're free to go, and then that's just how they do it. That's the way they want to go. Because it does happen commonly with people. They'll just even leave the room and they'll pass.
Right.
And they're gonna go get a tea, you know. And
Right.
so that is a common thing that happens to people. And some people think it's because of the person dying. That's really what they need to pass. Is they need not to have the one or two people there
Right.
that they really love or are attached to. So I wouldn't feel bad about that, honestly. Because, like I said, it's just that all the movies, they make you think that you're going to be there holding their hand, and
Right, right.
quite how it works.
Right. Well, I'm kind of thankful because I think because I am kind of sensitive, I don't handle death well, and even with my animals, I'm an emotional wreck for about a week after it happens, you know. So you might be right. My mother may have known that and not wanted me to be there, you know.
Yeah.
So
It does seem to happen that way. Do you think in Bakersfield, you were talking about feeling you have to talk to the right people about these situations. Do you think in Bakersfield there is an open-mindedness to the paranormal? Do you think it's kind of mixed depending on where you are?
I think most people are open. I think that it depends. Like some people kind of tend to lean toward the darker side of it, you know, and then there's people, of course, that they bring religion into it and they believe based on their faith. And so, yeah, I think it's mixed, but it's definitely open. Yeah.
Now, you were talking to me before the show about some of the history of Bakersfield that was kind of interesting, and you said some of it's not so great, and you were talking about there was like a witch hunt in the
Yeah, definitely. My family got caught up in it, and it was in the 80s. It made national headlines. The district attorney at the time and some of the law enforcement had accused certain families of basically being in a cult, in a devil-worshipping cult, and they were exploiting and molesting their children. And I don't really know. I was young, so I don't know except for looking back on it and knowing what my family went through. But yeah, they got accused of some crazy stuff, you know. So it's, and I don't know. I mean, I've had people that are older tell me that they believe there was a cult that operated around here, but it wasn't who was blamed.
That's usually the case.
Right.
Real cult's really hidden somewhere.
Right. So they have said that they think that there were things that were going on, and, you know, but they think maybe it was more not the families of the children. It was them abducting children. So I don't know.
Wow.
Like I said, I was small. So
Right. So did that get cleared up from your family in the sense, did it leave any sort of permanent damage?
aside from emotional damage to my family members, that's the biggest thing. And then you have this stigma in the community now that you are arrested for, child pornography and child exploitation, and nobody wants to be accused of that, and people will think it just because they heard something, whether you're found, guilty or innocent, they'll still believe it. So
Absolutely. That's the hard thing about things like that.
Yeah.
It really can ruin people.
Right.
Now, that sounds pretty scary. And I know there was a period in, the American history around that time with the Satanic Panic that turned out mostly to be bogus.
Right.
And there's, it's an odd thing why humans are so afraid of magic and witchcraft when, we were talking about this a couple days ago, when some of the biggest religions have caused way more torture and pain.
Right.
And maybe it's just a projection of their own guilt. You look at the Inquisition and the Crusades, and I'm like,
Right.
okay, who were the people doing that?
Yeah, what was that done in the name of? I agree, but not only that, but I mean, you wouldn't have modern medicine if it wasn't for witches, or the ones that were deemed witches,
Right. The herbal healers,
Right.
and yeah. So getting back a little to Bakersfield, there was something we heard. Now, you may or may not know about it, but we were fascinated with this idea of the statue. It's Garces.
Oh, Father Garces.
Memorial Circle. Tell us about that legend or that paranormal activity there.
I want to say that he either he does something. People have witnessed him doing something, or his eyes move. I can't remember what was said about it. I've never personally had an experience with it. But yeah, it was, I can't remember what was said about him now. But yeah, it was supposed to be something along those lines, that he either wept or his eyes moved or something like that. But yeah, he was one of the original founders of Bakersfield.
So yeah, and it's supposed to be connected to a potential accident is about to happen, or
right. Yeah, there'll be a car accident.
Like you said, get animated or something. I'm not sure either, but that was, we've gone by him a couple times just by, driving around, and we're like, looks pretty normal.
Yeah, I've never noticed anything strange about him. Thankfully, I've never been involved in any accidents either right there at the circle. Right. So maybe that's why, but maybe he hasn't had to, put anything forth to save me, or maybe he did and I didn't know. So
that one I wouldn't mind sort of going there at night or something, maybe safely somehow, just to see if anything can happen. There's nothing like a story about a statue that would do something that is very intriguing, whether they cry or whatever it is. It's something that is it touches the soul somehow. You want to believe it.
Right.
Like it's so magical. You know, you want to believe it.
Well, I think I avoid statues because I've always been terrified of dolls. So, I kind of avoid anything that's got a face that's not human. So, yeah.
Did you have scary dolls when you were younger?
My grandmother kept dolls, and she had a Chatty Cathy doll that was my mother's. And I didn't know about this doll. She had it put up in the closet because it needed a new voice box. So I was little and I was climbing up on the cupboards, anyway, I was climbing up on the closet that it was in, and I found it, and I got a hold of this doll, and I pulled the string, and it made the most horrific, just demonic sounding thing came out of it, because the voice box was broken. But anyway, I threw it in the back of that, and I started crying, and here comes my mother and my grandmother, like, what is going on? There's something up there, so... And the funny thing is about that same doll, George the Giant, his House of Oddities, he has a Chatty Cathy doll, and her name is Sarah Ann.
Ooh.
Yeah, so I've actually contacted him, and I was like, "Where did you get that doll?" Because my name is Sarah Ann, and I just have to know.
Oh, that's
because
I
was terrified of her when I was little.
Well, maybe it really was haunted, though.
Maybe.
I believe in haunted objects.
I do too, definitely. Yes. Especially dolls. I think that's why I don't like them. But
yeah, I have positive and negative views of dolls, because dolls can also be imbued with a positive spirit. But I'm with you. Like if there's we got a friend of ours gave us this doll that was definitely creepy, but we got a good home for one of the gals from Mystic Mittens took it in, or the two gals, and because they're really into the paranormal. We actually mailed it to them because our friend had given it to us, and we were like, okay, it's a little bit creepy, and put it amongst the dolls we had, and so we got to find a home for it. So there is something about, I mean, it's very primal, the thing with the dolls, that can be quite scary for adults.
Right. Well, I actually have, I didn't intend to have them, but I have two of my grandmother's baby dolls, and I've hated them since she got them. And how, maybe that's why they came back to me, because I didn't see them for years. And then my son was moving some stuff out of storage, and I ended up with these two dolls that I hated when she got them. And I was just like, I don't know what to do with you two. They're the ugliest little babies you've ever seen. But anyway, they're only about this big. And they've got the very expressive faces, I guess is my biggest issue with them.
Yeah,
so,
that can make it look scarier, especially in the dark or something, or light hits it a certain way.
Yeah, and I swear one of them moves. She really does.
I believe you. I slept one time I was at this friend's house, and I was sleeping in her guest room, and there I think it was something like a Winnie the Pooh or something, and it was in one place when I went to bed, and the next day it had literally moved across the room. Now, granted, I guess I could have slept walked and picked it up.
Right.
So I can't rule that out because I don't know. I don't think I sleepwalk, but who knows? But I remember thinking like, I know that doll was not there.
Right. Well, I think she watches me because I'm the only one that lives where I live, and she's up on a shelf with her, I guess it's supposed to be her brother. That's what I call him. They're sitting side by side, but I have them facing out into the room, and from time to time she'll be facing a different, it's not a big, huge noticeable change, but it's kind of noticeable because she'll be facing that way, or, she hasn't moved from the spot where she's at, but she's definitely changed positions. So I worry about her. I'm like, oh Lord.
You'll wake up and she's choking your neck.
Right. Yeah. Thankfully, she's a tiny doll, so I hope not. But
yeah, there's definitely something to the whole dolls, and what and that's why those scary movies are so like scary, Chucky and all that.
Yeah, they definitely play on someone's phobia for sure.
Now, are there places here in Bakersfield that you would like to spend more time at or go back to that you're still interested in terms of paranormal potential?
Well, for me, because my family is buried at Green Lawn on Panorama, I do plan on visiting on Halloween and doing the whole candle lighting, for them and stuff like that. And so I think kind of up there and on the bluffs, there's just a lot of energy for me up there, and it's good energy. It's not bad. So probably that area. And then, I'm curious about Union Cemetery as well. I think like a lot of people,
Well, if you ever want to go, I'm game.
Yeah.
Yes. Definitely.
Yeah. I think it would be interesting.
Yeah.
So, to say the least.
Well, I think things that have history tend to have, makes sense when they have a deeper history. There can be more paranormal activity because it's been there a while and it has these moments in history no matter what. And so do people here in Bakersfield, do they do sort of the Day of the Dead in the cemeteries on their own? Is there anything more organized?
I haven't noticed anything. I mean, except for the trick-or-treating, I haven't noticed any specific ceremonies that are done, except that there are candles that are lit on graves,
Well, that's cool.
on Halloween. So obviously there's people that practice that, belief.
Right.
So
right, they're honoring their ancestors and for whatever tradition they come from.
Well, I read about it, and the candle is supposed to help guide the spirit back to that place. So yeah,
that's really pretty. I'm gonna have to maybe that's something we're trying to figure out what we're gonna do here for the first Halloween in Bakersfield to connect with Bakersfield a little bit more too.
Right.
So. And then if people were visiting here, I was thinking, do you think there's like, you were talking about the downtown area, like someone had, I think I read somewhere Woolworth's building, which isn't open. Oh, it is supposed to open up again, Woolworth's.
Oh, is
I
it?
think. I think I saw it in the Bakersfield newspaper, something about it opening up again. But someone said something that could be like haunted, and it's one of the only, I think, Woolworths building around anymore.
Yeah.
It's pretty cool.
that I know of.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's an interesting building, just the building, you know,
Yes.
because it's so old. But that's an interesting place to go, and the antique shops. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think one of them burned down. But they're I think it was on 19th. Anyway, it was one of the larger antique shops. But I think it had a lot of energy because of the items in it, maybe.
Ah, right.
So,
that
yeah.
makes sense. Antiques.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering, you may or may not have an opinion about this, but I'm always interested in sort of the indigenous cultures in different areas, and I'm sort of trying to get to know a little bit of the Bakersfield tribes. And are there any that you know of, any sort of sacred areas that might be connected to some kind of activity, not necessarily hauntings, that would be
Right.
connected to the original indigenous Indians here?
I know it was the Yokits tribe that actually inhabited this valley where we're at. I cannot say the name of the tribe. I live in Lake Isabella, so there's a tribe up there, and for the life of me, I can't say the name of it. So, but they actually have a very tragic history. They were massacred by the United States government.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so there's only a few that are left of that tribe, but they have it's sacred because the massacre happened down the mountain from this spot, but there's 3 crosses on a mountaintop, a hilltop actually, that overlooks the lake. And that's where the people that murdered them, that's where they were at. That's where they
Wow.
were located. And they looked down, and this tribe was peaceful. You know, they didn't want any problems with the white man and the United States Army, and they had agreed to that, and they had actually got the Paiutes to agree to that, to be peaceful, and yet they were slaughtered. So yeah, that's the only sacred spot that I know of as far as, you know, the tribes people. I know there's the Paiutes that are like the Tehachapi area is primarily where they were at, and then there's Paiute Mountain. And I believe there's an Indian burial site on Paiute Mountain, but I wouldn't give it away if I did know. So just
good for
because,
you, yeah.
you know, people
Right.
will be dumb about it. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, the history in America against the killing of Indians is pretty horrific. And
Yeah.
I just pulled out a book about just the Californian history. I said, maybe it's time to read it. Now, I don't know why being in Bakersfield made me more interested.
Right.
There's something about Bakersfield that is different.
Yeah.
I don't know how to, having lived in, you know, LA and Venice area, and, you know, we've lived in other areas, but there's something somewhat unique about it. I don't know if it's because of the combination of how it was built with the oil fields and the
Right.
agricultural connection, the strong agricultural connection. And
Right.
it has a unique, in my opinion, energy that sort of I find interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. I know you feel like it's positive, but I feel there's a lot of negative energy here. A lot of sadness is
Well,
how
I
I've
think
always felt,
there's
but-
definitely some negative things, definitely, and I think, you know, also with some of the poverty here. Though honestly, LA is pretty high up there now too. I looked at some of the statistics recently with poverty, and LA County is way higher than it should be compared to the nation.
Right.
And we know that, having lived there, that you've got this extreme wealth, but there's definitely a lot of homelessness and.
Right.
Well, yeah, and we're still getting to know the area, but it just has a different feel, like in terms of its energy with the land. It's a different kind of land than I've ever lived in, and the heat. The bluffs are really beautiful for some reason. I find them really interesting energetically.
It's kind of a peaceful place for me. I like to go up there and just sit. And even though it overlooks the oil fields, which is not, you know,
Yeah.
really a nice thing to look at, it's still peaceful for some reason. So
That is
I
what's so
agree.
odd. Is
Yeah.
like you don't think you should feel that way with all the, but you do actually.
Yeah.
And the
Yep.
sunset's really pretty there. But no, I think I think a lot of places have a lot of sadness in general. If you look at all places, history, that's just part of human history, I think.
Right.
But it just is quite a different, you know, feeling to me in terms of even like, how do you work with the paranormal here versus like a city like LA, which is dense,
Right.
like really dense.
Right.
And Bakersfield is a little more spacious.
Right.
So,
Well, and like I said, I just enjoy being outside, I think, and I grew up riding horses and, playing outside. So I think for me, it was just natural to kind of gravitate toward looking outdoors for places. And I used to take a drive on Round Mountain Road, and, there's houses out there, but it also kind of leads up into the foothills. And I would just go out there some nights and sit and stargaze. And there's a lot of energy out there, and I can't specifically tell you like what it is. It's positive, So, but there's a lot of energy out there for me. And there's some roads that I've gone down that I'm terrified, and there's no reason for it that I can think of. I'm like, I don't know what is wrong with me right now, that I'm jumpy and, it just, so it really, there's this huge mix of feelings and emotions for me, I guess. So, but a lot of what I do is outside, and I guess it's where I prefer to be. So
it seems like a natural way to connect to anything sort of more spiritual or paranormal, and then it seems like a good way to do it too. But it can be creepy for sure. We've been in places that we wanted to get the heck out of there.
Right, yeah.
We didn't know why. It seemed peaceful, but we didn't feel it was peaceful.
Right, yeah. There's certain roads here that I've been down that are definitely like there's nothing out there, and maybe that's part of it, I don't know, but it's I can't think of the name of the road right now, but it's basically a farm road, and it goes from Wasco to here. And I took it by accident one night. I drive for Uber, and I had driven somebody way out there, and coming home I didn't have my maps going, and so I thought I knew where I was going and took a wrong turn, and I ended up on this road. Well, I found out about it later, and supposedly, because I was nervous the whole time, I locked my doors, everything, and I'm usually not like that when I'm in my car. I feel safe and I'm fine, but I was just completely creeped out the whole drive on this road. And I found out later that supposedly there's a lady that haunts this road she was either murdered out there or dumped out there or struck by a car. I can't remember the story about her, but she's supposed to haunt the road, and sometimes she'll run out in front of people and cause an accident, or
right.
She will end up in your vehicle with you and cause an accident. And so maybe that's the feeling I got, but
wow.
Yeah, it was definitely creepy.
Yeah, those ghost stories about people on roads, and especially getting into the car,
right.
that would definitely scare me.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to look over into my passenger seat and see any apparition ever. So, I probably would go off the road.
Maybe if it was a ghostly squirrel, I could handle it.
Right, maybe, yeah.
As long as it wasn't like baring its teeth at me or something. But
right, although I would imagine they'd be pretty vengeful. So. Although sometimes I think they run across the road on purpose. I really do. I think they're little adrenaline junkies or something.
That's true. Yeah. Have you ever had any experience with like spooky animal or heard of spooky animal stories in Bakersfield?
Well, I'm starting to question my dog, because she's, like I said, we live up at the lake, and the last probably week or so, she has been barking at least nothing I can see, and she's not usually like that. She's usually very quiet, and she'll get up at night and start barking. And, I have big windows in the back where you can see out, and it's an open pasture and mountains, there's nothing back there. But she'll be barking at something out there, and I'll look, and I can't see anything. And a couple of times I've gone, okay, I've gotten the flashlight out, what is out there? And I don't see anything. So, but yeah, I've questioned that. And I definitely think that animals are more in tune with everything, with sound, with light, with, darkness, probably. They're probably just more in tune to all of that, and I think they live, their world is just different, but yeah, I think that they're definitely more in tune with the spiritual world. And
does seem that they definitely have sharper senses,
right?
And so they see and hear things we can't see even in ordinary ways. But
right.
Does seem my experience with a cat especially was like that, and we had a cat like that where it would be meowing at something that nobody could see. But I think like water is associated a lot with paranormal activity.
Right.
So is there anything you think associated with the lake, particularly since you live by water, that you might feel is sort of paranormal related?
I've gone on a few walks out there, especially lately. I've been walking out there at night more, and it maybe there is something to it, because I'm definitely on high alert when I'm walking out there, and I'm usually a little more relaxed. But every time, and I don't know if it's because the light from the town is kind of behind you when you go out there, so it's very dark. And out of the corner of my eye, a few times, I've been like, "What was that? What was that?" Thinking that I saw a human figure, moving in the bushes, or just above the line of the bushes, and turn, and I don't see anything. So, yeah, I think maybe there's definitely something that water does. I don't know.
Yeah, it's associated, I think, with being able to see better or have more psychic abilities. It's like a conduit of it. It's the
Right.
water itself,
Right.
And, how many people live around Lake Isabella? Is
Um,
it a small group there?
it
or-
is small. I couldn't tell you the exact number, but it's very small. So it's Lake Isabella, Bodfish, Kernville, and Mount Mesa, and then there's Onyx and South Lake a little bit farther out. But it's tiny. We have one stoplight. So yeah,
That is small.
yeah, it's small. It's kind of nice, when I was younger, I would have been bored to death living up there, but now that I'm older and a little calmer and don't need to be living the party life all the time, you know what I mean? Anyway, it doesn't bother me to be up there at all. So
Yeah, I've wanted to go up there for some reason there. I'd always see the sign Lake Isabella, and I said, I got to go visit there. I don't know why. I felt a draw to it for some reason.
yeah, I kind of have too my whole life, and I never thought I'd be living up there, but there's a lot of energy up there too, and it's got a really colorful history because of the mining that went on, and the mining town. The town of Kernville was a huge mining town, and not huge in size wise, but the mines that were there were, good size and produced quite a bit of mineral, and it was also known for its fights and shootouts, and
Oh.
yeah, so it's got that Wild West history, and then of course there's the sad side of it with the tribe that was there and what happened with them, and so
Yeah, that it's underneath the when you start to get to some of the deeper history in the United States, there is a lot of that tragedy, unfortunately.
Right.
And I suspect it does affect some of the paranormal activity in different locations.
right. I had an app that I was using on my phone that it's supposed to let the voices come through, of the dead. And a few times I've wondered, because I started like researching the history of Mount Mesa and the tribes people, that was, one of the areas that they stayed at. And so I've wondered a few times, because I'll think that what's coming through is gibberish because I can't understand it. But I've wondered if it's not their native tongue, because it's definitely saying something, and it a couple of times I've heard it say it more than once, but I don't know what it is. It's definitely not English.
Well, that is really interesting, because you rarely, once in a while, you'll hear someone capture something in another language, and you would think you would do that if you were connecting to certain areas that had a different language.
Right.
So it's certainly possible based on something logical. It's logical that they'd be speaking their own language. And
Right.
it would be interesting for people to really start capturing particularly indigenous languages. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, that's the only thing I could relate it to, is maybe what I've been hearing is this, because I got kind of frustrated for a while. I was like, well, this is just ridiculous. They're just talking gibberish. It's not real. And so I dismissed it. Then when I started researching, like I said, the history of the land, I thought, well, maybe it's their language. So, and it's just me that's really ridiculous. So, yeah.
So I know we're getting closer to the end of the show. Is there anything that you have for the future for yourself that you want to go deeper into in terms of your interest in anything in the paranormal?
Well, for me, I really do want to find out, if we're related to the bells that were cursed or haunted, or, whatever you want to call it. That is kind of something that I'm curious about. And then, I really want to, I'm really looking for solid proof, I think, at this point in my life because of, losing so many family members that were close. And I don't know if I'll get it, but, I think that's my thing is trying to, like you said, whether it's through photography and catching something in a photograph or just some kind of something I can, for myself, I don't want to take it to the world necessarily, but so that I know that there's, that it's real. So,
I think that's a great ambition.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Sarah, for coming on the show. It's been a lot of fun. I'm really glad you could come on the show.
Oh, yeah, me too. Thank you for having me.
You're most welcome. And join us next time as we continue to explore the esoteric and the obscure together. Have a spooky week.